Hi and welcome to WarHQ. My name is Lucius. In today's episode, what we'll be aiming to do is continue on our Blood Bowl theme with Wood Elves. In this episode in particular, the idea is to go more of a detailed faction breakdown, where within the last episode, what we did was break down two of the main box sets, being the Tree Men and the Athlon Avengers, and what you get in them, and then creating a couple of, random builds for teams within that for a potential league at different points values. And today what I wanted to do really was go through more of their strengths, weaknesses, the roles, the positionals, maybe some of the skills you might train, think of training first with your star player points, and just have a basic shit talk about Wood Elves. So if you like that kind of thing, I suggest you stick around. But first, if you've got the time, we'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel. Means a lot to us here at WarHQ. We're still a fairly humble channel, but with your added subscription, what we can do is we can add more content and start being a bit more serious about what we do, which would be great. I'd really like that, and I'm sure you would too. But for now, let's get started. If you're thinking about the Wood Elves within Blood Bowl, the first thing that really jumps out to me is, if I was going to pigeonhole them into a category or a role within the game, they're rapid, agile touchdown machines. That's how I like to refer to them anyway. And what I mean by that is these guys have all the tools to actually play the game of Blood Bowl in a competitive sense, I guess, trying to throw the ball, catch the ball, run and score touchdowns. In that kind of sense, this is the team. They're probably one of the best at it. There's a couple of others that are on, probably on par and very close to it as well. But for me, this is the ultimate touchdown machine, is the Wood Elves. So if you kind of like that idea with a team, this is the team for you. Now, let's have a look at the strengths of the Wood Elves within Blood Bowl. Now, this is something like these next points that I'm going to talk about really make this team the touchdown scoring machine that they are. And the first thing I'm going to mention is their agility. So every single elf on this team has an agility of 2+. Now that's your linemen, your throwers, your catchers, your war dancers, all have a 2+. This means that these guys can pick up the ball, they can catch the ball, they can dodge out of tackle zones, they can do all sorts of things, and with relative ease. You feel fairly confident at most stages of a game of Blood Bowl that these guys are going to be able to get around the opponent's break tackle zones and do whatever you want to do with them. That is a huge strength, particularly when every single player on the team has that. The next thing we're going to look at, and this combines with the agility, and that's the movement, the base movement of these models. So every single elf player on this team, again, has a very high movement. So the lowest is 7, being the thrower and the lineman, and the highest is 8, being the war dancer and the catcher. Now, every single model on the team having a movement of that ensures that you're going to be able to get to wherever you want to go to. And this helps massively when trying to score touchdowns and tries or anything you want to do within this game. There's been many times with a combination of this amazing agility and movement that I've been able to redeploy this entire team. So what I mean by that is, if, say, I get kicked off to and I receive the ball, what happens is I might see a strong point of the enemy, so I redeploy everyone and cage on one side of the field. And with movement and agility like this, it just makes it a breeze to move your entire team to where you want them to be. A lot of slower teams really lack with this. So if you're coming across something that is very slow, you can throw half of the enemy's team off just by simply moving every single model of yours to the other side of the board or to one side of the board, and they really struggle to try and redeploy their guys to catch up to you, without having to push it and all these kind of things. And that just increases their chances of making a mistake. So these two things really combine to make their biggest strength, which is their ball game. And their ball game is a massive, you know what I mean? You have a thrower with a 2+ passing and pass ability, which is amazing. You've got catches with a 2+, or every player has a 2+, but on a base catch with their agility. But the catcher has a catch as well. So you've got actual proper throwers and proper catchers and proper positionals that can play the game of Blood Bowl. Not so much the bruising bit and the fighting, but more so the actual ball game itself. And I think the ball game is what the Wood Elves excel at, and you are going to be scoring touchdowns galore. Once you get some nice little tactics together with these guys, the touchdowns will just flow. And with the touchdowns flowing comes the SP flow. So you will be training these guys up in leagues, and they will be getting pretty powerful pretty quickly. And probably the last thing I'll mention is these guys have one of the best positional players in the game, in my opinion, and that is the War Dancer. Now, why is the War Dancer one of the best players in the game? It's pretty simple. They already come with a blodge setup, so they can already block and dodge, and they have leap as well. Now, combine this with, the agility of 2+, like the rest of the team, and a base of 8 of movement, and you have yourself a scoring, blitzing machine. Like, these guys are amazing. Leap, I know Leap got nerfed a little bit in the 2020 version of Blood Bowl, but it's still pretty good. Like, I've attempted it 3 times. I've made 2 of them, and I've failed 1 within the leagues that I've been playing lately. So that's probably a good indication of how many times you're probably going to succeed. 2 and 3 with a Leap. But sometimes you don't need it, sometimes it's just easy just to dodge out of, the opponent's tackle zones and just sprint down the field. It really helps these guys. So that's the strengths of the Wood Elves. Now, with all these amazing strengths, there has to be some weaknesses. There has to be something to balance these guys out, to make them not, OP and broken, I guess you might say. And there are quite a few. The first one I'd mention is their lack of armor. Now, all of them have an armor value of 8+, which isn't great. Like, that's even your War Dancers, like your best model in the game, who is a blitzer, and that only has an armor value of 8+. That makes these guys prime candidates for getting fouled. You know what I mean? You are going to lose some. They are quite brittle. You will by the end of the game you'll have quite a few in the dugout. It's just how it's going to go. But if you can just handle that and stay away from the opponent most of the time, is probably your best bet. The second thing I'll say as a weakness is they are expensive. This really limits your choices as a team manager. When you start a league, it really limits your choices on what you can actually get. For example, you're not going to be getting 2 War Dancers and a Tree Man and then everything else you want. You're going to have to sacrifice a lot to get that kind of build. You're probably only going to have linemen with no throwers or catchers, which isn't a good build. So, I did go over some of the sample builds that I had within the last video I made for the Wood Elves. But that is a massive, massive problem with your cheapest player coming in at 70,000 for a lineman with no skills, up to your most expensive player being the War Dancer at 125,000. But I will say with the 2 War Dancers you get, they are like star players already. They have the skills that you would give them generally. So, it does balance out, but it does limit you in choosing things when you start a league or you start a competition. You are going to feel a little bit limited, is probably the best way to put it. So what this also brings on is generally at the start of a league is a lack of team rerolls because everything's so expensive. You're really pushing it to get like 2, maximum 3 rerolls at the start of your competitional league. I think from my playing, that has been a major disadvantage because without those extra rerolls, and you tend to burn them up within the first couple of turns, I find, especially if you're receiving, because you're going to probably use them to score a touchdown. So you pretty much nearly burnt all your rerolls by halfway through the first half of the game, and by that time you're really struggling with no rerolls. You just got to leave it in the hands of Nuffle to bless your dice rolls or something, and it can feel like that in the second half and later in the first half that you've just got to go on chance and whim because there's not many more rerolls left. So rerolls are something, if you can get them at the start of the league, are really important. They only start at 50,000, which is great, but go up to 100,000 obviously afterwards. So getting at least 3 if you can, but it's so hard. It's so hard to get a decent team and 3 rerolls. You may be stuck with 2, and it's not massive amounts of rerolls. So those are the things. And also probably the last weakness that they have is because they are scoring machines, and they're going to be making passes and converting passes all the time. They're going to be doing some amazing stuff and scoring lots of SP. So what happens then is these guys tend to skill up quite quickly. What happens then is the price of your team starts getting quite insane, even relatively quickly. Your players start costing a lot of money, and then your team starts costing a lot of money. Then all of your opponents then get quite a lot of inducements to ruin your day. I mean, a lot in the leagues I was playing, these guys, I got them up to like 1.5 million team value relatively quickly by the second league that I played. And by that stage, some of the teams I was playing, like they could just literally with the money and inducements they were getting, they could hire star players. And I started losing games. So you got to look at them that way too. You know what I mean? You're going to get quite rich on these guys with SP and team value. So just keep those things in mind. But they're the weaknesses of the Wood Elves. Now, the first positional we're looking at is the humble lineman, him or herself. Now, the Wood Elf linemen aren't so humble, really. They're actually decent players, like compared to most. I don't think you're going to use them like you normally use linemen. They don't have very good armor. I generally like to, well, besides the ones that I have to deploy on the line, I generally like to deploy them at least a square back from the front line of scrimmage. This way that they won't get tackled and hacked on the first turn. And beaten the crap out of by a stronger team. So, but upon saying that too, they have very good agility. They have very good movement, and they can pass. I mean, if they had to at a pinch, it's a 4+. It's probably better than most linemen. Now, as far as training these guys go, a random general skill for 3 points isn't a bad way to go. You can, there's quite a few good ones in there that you'd probably want. So from general, you're probably looking at like block. Really good, obviously, for a lineman on the front there. It's going to keep them alive longer and be more effective. Dauntless potential, not too bad. Like sometimes you come across Black Orcs or something, and these guys don't have the punch to do anything to them. They just get wrecked. Having something like Dauntless can help bridge that gap to that 4 strength if needed. So it's not the worst thing. Or Pro is another one that I don't mind, considering the team has a lack of rerolls on its side. Generally, having Pro on your lineman actually gives you that little chance to get an extra reroll if you buff up one of your rolls, which is never a bad thing. And alternatively, on the agility side, you're looking at dodge, perhaps. I mean, I say dodge because they do have the potential to catch. They do have the potential to run with the ball. It's not unheard of that these guys might be scoring some points, say if your war dancers and catchers are just not in the right position or something to do so. So dodge isn't bad. Sidestep is pretty good. It enables you on pushes and stuff like that to really get to where you want to go to put pressure on the ball handler maybe, or to get within a cage. And defensive is another one you might want to consider. Just to give you that edge when you're getting blocked, multiple blocked by certain characters. A couple of defensive players doesn't hurt to take away an opponent's guard. And I think that's probably the progression you're looking at with your Wood Elf lineman. Now, the Wood Elf thrower as a positional. I'm a firm believer if you're going to have a positional that is good at actually throwing, then just keep it going, I think. Keep making it better all the time. I really suggest probably not taking a random skill to start with. I'd probably save up and take something like, this would be my choices anyway, so Accurate would be a good one for your short-range passes. Cannoneer for your long-range passes. Leader is not a bad one to get that free team reroll. And I think this is the kind of player that might be staying around a little bit longer than your other ones. Like your war dancers and your linemen tend to get crumped quite a bit, as do your catchers. But your thrower, if you're going to use them as a quarterback in that role at the back of the line, can really use Leader and probably be able to stick with that, as an extra reroll, which is bonus. And Nerves of Steel, obviously, is another really good one, so you can, throw within while people have tackle zones on you and stuff like that. Those would be my choices as the skills that I would choose first. But if you look at the other options they have, I'd probably either go Dodge or Sure Hands are two other ones I'd use from some other categories as well. But that's your thrower. I mean, they've got a 2+ passing ability, which is amazing. They're fast, they're agile. It's everything you want in a thrower, really. The Wood Elf catcher is a thing of beauty. Literally and figuratively. These guys come with catch and dodge as a base, which are really, what you really want to give them. But once you're starting to look at their progression, I'd probably shy away from most random skills. And these guys are going to score a bit, so I think I would actually choose my primary skills. And my choices for these would be Sure Hands, always a good one. Sprint. Sprint will put them up to, a potential of 11 movement, which is pretty amazing. Block is always a good one because, these guys do have a strength of 2, so they are a bit weaker. So on anything where, you get block dice, at least you're not getting taken down if you're a ball carrier, which is a bonus. Jump up, probably one of my number one skills for these guys, because if you are somewhere, you're laying down in the backfield of the enemy there, you can jump these guys up and still get that excellent movement and maybe score from that. Sidestep, always handy. When you're getting blocked or pushed, you can move to where you want to go. And fend is another good one. So if you get pushed back and you've got the ball, then you can keep that opponent at bay so that you're not having to dodge out of their tackle zones. Pretty amazing stuff. These guys are super fast and super talented Blood Bowl players. Definite addition to your team. Now, it might already seem that your War Dancers are probably the star players on your team already, and let's face it, they are. They already have the two main skills that you'd want to give these guys, which is block and dodge. Now, what things might be able to complement these guys, you say? Well, a lot of things, actually. A lot of skills are going to be really helpful for these guys. Again, because they're like really expensive, awesome players, you probably want to choose your skills again as opposed to just go random. But these guys are going to be scoring a lot and getting the job done anyway for you, so you don't have to worry about too much about saving up the 6 SP you need to choose a primary skill. Some of my recommendations would be sprint, obvious reasons. Dauntless is another good one. If you're going to do a blitz with them, making blitzes, and you're going to attack big things or things that are stronger than you. Jump up is always really handy. Again, like the catcher, they can get up off the ground and they can have their full movement. Fend is another important one. When they get pushed, maybe with the ball, they can keep the enemy at bay. Catch might be one you want to look at if you want to start going for long passes and things like that. Sure feet or sure hands, always important. You're always going to roll a 1 eventually, aren't you, when you're sprinting or, trying to pick up a ball on a 2+. It does happen. So that just ensures that you've got an extra reroll up there, which is what the team's lacking, as I said before. So you might want to look at those options for your War Dancer. Now, I find the Tree Man to be a pretty awesome addition to the Wood Elf team. A lot of people don't rate it, but I think they're really good, particularly with Strength 6 and some of the other skills that they actually have naturally. This is probably the main player on your team that's going to be causing casualties, I guess. And because they're causing casualties, what they're going to be doing is getting some SP occasionally. Now, they are limited to strength skills with their primary. I don't know, you could risk a random strength skill. Most of them are useful, probably about 50% of the useful, the other 50% aren't. But my choices, if you were going to choose, which I'd probably recommend, would be guard. Guard is important. They're going to be on the line a lot. You're not using this to throw anything. You've got nothing to actually throw on this team. So this guy is going to be on the line most of the time, and being able to assist those other linemen with guard is very important. Brawler, I think, is probably the number one skill for this one, because with Brawler, you're going to be able to re-roll that 1 both down dice, because saving up to get block as an actual skill is quite a long way off. So if you're not going to want to wait for that, then just get the poor man's block, which is Brawler, which I really recommend. Grab can be handy. You can grab those block players and put them wherever you want to put them around you. And another one is multi-block. And I say multi-block, multiple block is good for the Tree Man because you lose 2 strength, but you can do 2 blocks. So it has a strength of 6, so you're going to do 2 4-strength blocks, which is still really good if you're playing against a strength 3 team, or heaven forbid a strength 2 team, which would be even better. You're going to get 2 to 3 dice respectively, and be able to double block, which will maximize the utility of this piece on the field to make it useful, I guess, more useful. It is already useful. So that's my recommendations for the Humble Tree Man. Now, my choice for MVP on this team is probably no surprise. It is the War Dancer. They're expensive, but hey, they can do everything. They can block, dodge, leap. They can catch. They're not the worst in the game at passing, not that you'd probably use them for that. They're fast, amazing agility. I mean, what else do you want in a blitzer / catching, passing, destroying machine? It's the War Dancer, and that is why they're ranked as one of the best players in the game also. Just from the combination of things, their only real weakness is their lack of armor, being 8+, does make them quite vulnerable to getting head stomped or just taken out by a random good dice roll as a casualty. So the War Dancer for me, MVP. So there you have the Wood Elves within Blood Bowl. It's just a little breakdown. I'm just going to go over now just a few tactical advice that I've learnt along my way as a Wood Elf coach. I really suggest your setup and layout at the start of each drive is essential. These guys really work. You get your 3 players on the middle line, usually your tree man and 2 linemen, and then I offset my other lineman basically 1 square back from the line of scrimmage, just so, and I cover all the gaps so nothing can run through without getting tackled. And then I distribute like the war dancers and catchers around the place on the inside of the middle part of the board to try and get them in good positions to be able to rapidly deploy or to score or whatever they need to do within that turn. It just makes it a lot easier for you to get into them and do those things. The thrower is generally at the back if I've got one. So deployment is essential, hey, with these guys, as I said. You don't want to be putting them all on the line against something like Black Orcs, where you're going to get stomped and you're going to get curb stomped hard, and half your team's going to be casualtied and on the ground. So the less of them you've got to get injured, the better each turn, I find. So always try and keep them away from the enemy. And it's not a bad tactic with the 2+ agility. If you're just being marked by one guy, then just break tackle with as many as you can, especially if you've got a spare reroll up your sleeve. Always important. You're going to succeed most of the time. This team's really good at that kind of stuff. So keep that in mind. As far as offensively goes, like, you want to be able to just create holes basically through the enemy and outmaneuver them. If you're fighting a slow team, as I told you before, you can redeploy your entire team by just swinging them all over to one side of the board. And this, with a slow team, anything with like movement 4 or anything like dwarfs or something, you've pretty much just put half of their team offside, which are not going to be able to get to you. So you've halved the threat of their team automatically. And then you can start trying to dodge through and punch holes through gaps with the advantage on the next turn. It's really up to you. Blitzers, like, as far as the War Dancer goes, very effective at creating a hole, so is the Tree Man. Obviously, the Tree Man doesn't have the movement of the War Dancer. The War Dancer can also leap over other people, which makes them pretty important as opposed to getting behind the enemy line. Once you can get a couple of catches and War Dancers behind the enemy line, you've got passing opportunities. You've got a lot of opportunities. I mean, turn 1, thrower gets the ball, brings it up, hands it off to a catcher or a War Dancer. War Dancer / catcher either dodges his way out of the enemy line, gets halfway up towards the end zone, nearly there, will score in the second turn. It's doable. If that hole is already there, what you can also do is then start filling other elves through that hole to be able to protect the ball carrier. And I do this one a lot, so if I can create a hole on a flank or in the center, sometimes I will just feed players through that hole and not try and engage with them. I'll break tackles with them. I'll try and get them through that hole and defend and screen that player that broke through. And that can, a lot of the time, stop the opponent from being able to blitz or rush that player and overwhelm them. These are just a few tactical hints, like there's so many more. But if you've got any more, please share them with me below. If you're a Wood Elf player, let me know how you use them. I really like this team. Like, I haven't, I've had trouble with some tougher teams. I'm talking about Black Orcs a lot. It's because there's Black Orcs in my leagues that I've played. There's been quite a few Black Orc teams. So that kind of is one of my main enemies at the moment. So that's why I mention them a lot. They are quite competitive against the Wood Elves, I think. You've got the nimble goblins and you've got the really strong front line, particularly when they've got 6 Black Orcs and the Troll. That makes them pretty hard to punch through. Like, you can pretty much cover most of the field with those and beat the crap out of elves left, right, and center. And very hard to get into that cage when they're Black Orced up around a goblin as well. But be careful of those strong teams. Just avoid them. Anything you're on an even teal with, like, I find this team runs rings around the new Imperial team, just simply because they're all strength 3 generally, except for the catcher, and can punch back nearly as good without the armor, obviously. But yeah, that's my Wood Elves. This is WarHQ. We thank you for your time. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you've made it this far. You'll obviously like this content, and we like you. So hit that subscribe button. Takes you a second to do, and we'll be eternally grateful. Thank you very much. And for now, I'm Lucius. This is WarHQ, and I am signing out.